Hello and welcome to the Joe Ligato Show. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Ligato, and today we're going to be reading this article from PBS on everything you need to know about the largest strikes happening in the United States. The United States has had some of the largest strikes, the most strikes it's ever had in history. People are just unhappy with the economy. They're unhappy with their financial situation. They're in far more debt than they wanted to be. Things are just deteriorating in America at a very, very rapid rate. And these strikes are occurring at a time when union membership is pretty low compared to other times throughout history. And so it's shocking that these amount of strikes are actually happening. I've read recent studies that the majority of people, if they're not striking, if they're not leaving work, they're actually just slacking off at work because they just don't like their job. So it's a concerning situation for America to be in, but that is a situation because it is a deteriorating country. So let's see what this article from PBS has to say on the issue. It's been a big year for labor organizing in the United States. And from auto production lines to Hollywood, all eyes are on strikes taking the world of work by storm. The boiling point we're seeing today comes amid soaring costs of living and rising inequality, including growing pay gaps between workers and top executives. So if a top executive is making 300, 400 times the amount as the average worker, you're saying that top executive is doing 300 to 400 times the amount of work, which I don't think is a fair thing to say. We have various ways of quantifying the value of work, and it's not legitimate to quantify it as 300 to 400 times the amount of work as the average worker. Now, thousands of workers who were asked to make sacrifices during the pandemic, even as corporate profits soared, are asking for better pay and protections, and walking off the job if progress isn't made in heated contract negotiations. At least 453,000 workers have participated in 312 strikes in the United States this year, according to Johnny Callis. Okay, when was this article? October 5th. I heard that there are even more strikes that have occurred since this article was published. So it's happening at increasing rates too. So Johnny Callis, a PhD candidate and the project director of Cornell University's Labor Action Tracker, this year's work stoppages have spread across multiple industries, including transportation, entertainment, and hospitality. I would say all three of those are extremely important. Transportation, you obviously want to have things like cars within your nation so people can get to the places they need to go to. Entertainment, so people can have something to do in their day-to-day lives to take their minds off of stress. And hospitality, so that people can, say, go on vacation. And so having all these industries declining or having strikes so they can't work at full efficiency is making people dissatisfied all throughout the United States. So here's a rundown of the largest strikes taking place in the United States today. 75,000 workers at Kaiser Permanente walked off the job. In the healthcare sector, that's another sector that's extremely important. You can't just have people leaving in the healthcare sector, but that's what's happening. A major strike kicked off this week, with some 75,000 Kaiser Permanente workers walking off the job Wednesday in multiple states. Strikers included licensed vocational nurses, home health aides, and ultrasound sonographers, as well as technicians in the radiology, x-ray, surgical, pharmacy, and emergency departments. The coalition of Kaiser Permanente unions, which represents about 85,000 of the health system's employees nationally, approved a strike for 3 days in California, Colorado, Oregon, and Washington, and for 1 day in Virginia and Washington, D.C. Back in August, unions representing Kaiser workers asked for a $25 hourly minimum wage, as well as increases of 7% each year for the first 2 years and 6.2.5% each year in the 2 years afterwards. Okay, so workers have not been getting good wages in terms of keeping up with inflation. I believe I read somewhere that if you're adjusting for inflation compared to a few decades ago, the minimum wage should be something like $41 per hour. And so they're not asking for much here, just really asking to keep up with inflation and reach parity with what minimum wage used to be in the United States. Union members say understaffing is boosting the hospital system's profit, but hurting patients, and executives have been bargaining in bad faith during negotiation. Okay, so I talk about this all the time where leaders in modern America, they take all of the benefits of leadership and then they push off the consequences and responsibilities to the people who they're supposed to be helping. That's what's called servant leadership. But That's not how leaders traditionally have worked. It typically is, if you're a leader, the buck stops with you. You're the one ultimately responsible. You take on all the benefits, but you also take on all the risks and consequences, and that's just not what we're seeing in modern America anymore. Company executive Michelle Gaskell-Hames defended Kaiser, saying its practices, compensation, and retention are better than its competitors. Kaiser has promoted minimum hourly wages of between $21 and $23 next year, depending on the location. So again, not good enough. That's a little bit over half of what it should be, given minimum wage adjustments that should have occurred due to inflation. See, that's the thing. I don't understand why we didn't have these inflation adjustments to begin with, where if you have a minimum wage law, just peg it to inflation. Okay? Every year, adjust it. Every year, update it. Kaiser is one of the country's larger insurers and healthcare system operators, serving nearly 13 million people. The Oakland, California-based nonprofit said its 39 hospitals, including emergency rooms, will remain open during the picketing, though appointments and non-urgent procedures could be delayed. Doctors are also not participating in the strike, and Kaiser said it was bringing in thousands of temporary workers. UAW strike nears, okay, so this is another one we just talked about, the healthcare sector. UAW strike nears 3-week mark with 25,000 on the picket line. In an unprecedented labor campaign against 3 major car companies, some 25,000 auto workers have joined picket lines in recent weeks. The United Auto Workers targeted strikes against General Motors, Stellantis, and Ford. Okay, so Stellantis is the new name for Chrysler. I learned that in a prior video. I'm not keeping up with the times, apparently. I didn't realize they renamed. And Ford began at select factories after the union's contract with the companies expired in mid-September, and have grown to a total of 5 vehicle assembly plants and 38 parts warehouses since. UAW President Shawn Fain has announced strike expansions on each of the past 2 Fridays, citing a lack of what the union says is meaningful progress, but it's unclear how much that will continue as the strike nears its 3-week mark. A person with direct knowledge of the talks told Associated Press Wednesday that progress was reported at all 3 companies, with some offers being exchanged, and others said there was more movement in talks with Jeep maker Stellantis and less at Ford and General Motors. Neither want to be identified because they aren't authorized to speak publicly about the bargaining. Okay? Fain will update members on the negotiations again on Friday. The union is seeking 36% general wage increases over 4 years, as well as 32-hour work week with 40 hours of pay, the restoration of traditional defined benefit pensions for new hires, and the return of cost of living pay raises, among other benefits. Okay, so a couple of those things should be obvious. You should always be getting cost of living pay raises so you can continue to afford to live. That should be a no-brainer. In terms of 32-hour work week for 40 hours of pay, I think that's a bad way for PBS to word this. People's productivity has been increasing while their compensation has not been increasing. So paying for 40 hours of pay for only 32 hours a week of work, that's pretty legitimate. If I remember correctly, since the 70s, there's been essentially a doubling in terms of productivity, while compensation has barely gone up since the 70s. Okay? So really, that should be a 20-hour work week for 40 hours of current pay, given how things are going, how productivity has increased over time. The companies, however, fear that raising their labor costs could make their vehicles more expensive than those manufactured by Tesla or foreign automakers, with U.S. factories where workers are paid less. Tensions have also arisen amid layoffs impacting thousands of workers, with the automakers saying some factories are running short on parts because of the strike. I mean, no doubt, that's the point of the strike. It's to make things inconvenient so the companies come to the bargaining table. Striking Hollywood actors resumed talks with studios. Hollywood was taken by storm this summer with a historic dual strike from the unions representing writers and actors, bringing much of production to a halt. After 5 months of picket line, writer's strike was declared over after their union approved a contract agreement with studios last week. Meanwhile, actors are still on strike, but a shot at cutting their own deal is finally on the horizon. Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, which I think is going to become increasingly irrelevant given alternative media, alternative forms of entertainment, But they began negotiating Monday with the same group of major studios and streaming services, the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, for the first time since they joined writers on the picket lines on July 14th. Two sides resumed talks Wednesday with similar sticking points to the writers, actors, and their employers have been divided on issues of pay, the use of artificial intelligence, self-taped auditions. SAG-AFTRA leaders said they would look closely at the gains and compromises of the writers' deal, but emphasized that their demands would remain the same as they were when the strike began. The two sides said in a joint statement that several executives from studios would be in on the talks without providing names. Okay, so I don't personally care about the media and entertainment industry. I think they're horrific. I think they support Zionism and the genocidal intentions towards Palestinians, and this channel believes in a free Palestine. So I don't really care about those workers. I don't care about if they're given a living wage or not. South Carolina hotel workers rolling strikes. Thousands of hotel workers in South Carolina have staged staggering walkouts over recent months. Union leaders are calling for better wages, improved health care, higher pension contributions, better safety protections, and less strenuous workloads, among other things. Okay. Members of Unite Here Local 11 overwhelmingly voted in favor of authorizing a strike back in June after contracts expired at more than 60 hotels, including properties owned by major chains such as Marriott and Hilton. Cooks, room attendants, dishwashers, servers, bellmen, and front desk agents began picketing outside major hotels in Los Angeles and Orange counties at the start of July. During the staggered strikes, workers have also called for solidarity and boycotts of hotels in the Los Angeles area, according to United Here Local 11 website. The rolling walkouts surpassed the 100th strike mark last month. Wow, okay. While walkouts continue in dozens of hotels, two companies have made agreements with the union to date. On Friday, United Here Local said that Biltmore, Los Angeles has reached a tentative contract agreement joining Westin Bonaventure Hotel and Suites, which averted walkouts with a June deal promising higher pay and increasing staffing levels. Okay, so what we're going to see here is that things are going to get increasingly worse in the Western world across the board. Services are declining. I remember a few years ago, for various conferences, I had to take flights and across the world or across the nation at the very least. And the flights went particularly, they went okay. I wouldn't say they went very well, but they were okay. My flights to the Philippines from American organizations, American businesses were horrific. I had JetBlue and they just did a terrible job, missed my flight, didn't properly compensate me for the missing of the flight, et cetera, et cetera. And so you're seeing this across the board. Before I left America, various industries, I noticed that the quality was declining. The prices were increasing. The portion sizes of food were declining. Just across the board, you're seeing that the deterioration of living conditions in the United States, in the Western world, and it should be concerning. You should be very concerned. If you have the opportunity, I say this in a lot of my videos, if you have the opportunity to leave the West, this is the time to leave the West. So if you found this article on worker strikes and the continuing decline of the Western world to be informative, please give us a like. It helps us in the algorithm. Please subscribe to our channel here on YouTube as well as on Rumble. All of my videos are automatically synced to Rumble, and I've been spending a lot more time following things going on Rumble. I've been focusing a lot more of my efforts on Rumble because I'm obviously being suppressed in the YouTube algorithm. So please go over to Rumble. Please subscribe to our channel on Rumble. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, critiques, please tell me either on Rumble or on YouTube in the comment box below. I always read them and I try to comment and respond when necessary. So thank you again for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye.